Cyril is an electronics and industrial engineer. He served in the British military, specialising in signals and communications. After 25 years in the industry around the world, he joined the healthcare profession and specialised in biofeedback as a pain management practitioner. He recognised EMF as a major contributing issue to people's various health problems, chronic health problems, and dedicated himself full-time to EMF consultancy, which he offers at home and in the workplace. Please make welcome Cyril Bourke.
Hi. It's a fabulous turnout. It's great to see so many people here with such a variety of topics. So my topic might be a bit dry in comparison to the previous ones, but you've obviously got an opportunity to see what we're talking about. This is me, and they've asked me to talk on EMF. One of my websites is emfsafety.com.au, and yeah, up until very recently I was running a healthcare company working with biofeedback and teaching the general public and doctors and practitioners about pain management and how electrical voltages work in the body and how we're able to use those to heal and repair. And there's many, many different ways of putting that type of material together. Now, when I first was looking at helping clients, etc., we developed a website that was looking at home and work areas, and that was healthexpressworld.com, and that's more about domestic devices, etc., and looking at things like low EMF earphones and things that can help you in your home. But my work more and more is becoming consultancy, actually going into people's homes and helping them find out what's going on. So really I'm going to explain maybe that side of things, because you all live in a home, you all face the same problems as all our clients, and understanding some of those can really shortcut a lot of problems that can occur in your health. So I'm going to talk about EMF and that type of thing within the home and the workplace. This is Robert O. Becker. Now, he wrote a book back in 1985 about the electrical fields of the body. Now, the electrical fields of the body for him, research-wise, he was looking at how, particularly things like salamanders, these primeval fish that are able to repair themselves when they lose limbs. And he was excited to see that with stimulation, electrical stimulation that they develop themselves, they're able to rebuild their own structure. And they started researching that to look at what influences our bodies, our functions, etc. And the research he did was very significant, because as a result of that, he made this statement. Most of you have probably read that statement by now while I've been talking. He was saying that basically EMF, the proliferation of electromagnetic energy within our environment, he saw it as possibly the biggest pollutant that we have to face today, including global warming. So that was back in '85, just by looking at how our bodies operate and rely on electrical fields. And we're being, shall we say, drowned in electrical fields now that aren't ours. This is the book that he put together, and The Body Electric, and I'll put the details down there for anybody that's interested. But he was, because he was an expert in EMF and electrical fields and the way radiation and other elements affect the body, he was involved in lots of committees, and people were asking his expert advice. And from there he got an idea, an understanding of the influence of industry. He found even back in 1985 that there was, shall we say, industrial pressures to ignore or play down the amount of damage and distortion to the body and health from industry. And he was seeing that from a number of committees. Now, that was 1985. Now in 2002, Australia looked like that when it came to density of networks. Now, as I bring us year by year forward, you'll see more and more on that map. So 2002, we really had very low levels of EMF density. This is related to the number of towers, the number of hotspots that were available, etc. Now, by 4 years later, 2006, we're looking at clusters. We're looking at cities, and we know we were starting to get internet ourselves. We were maybe going to internet cafes. We were starting to use internet in smartphones and really starting to get involved. So as a consumer, we were starting to get hooked. By 2008, they realised they wanted to sell us this data, and they put it on the highways. They made it so when you're in your car and when you're going out to the outlying districts, you've got more and more access. 2010, we can see the rollout coming. That's 2015. Can you see the exponential growth? Any guesses what it looks like now? Can you see that? Any one of you can go to this. You can go to wiggle.net, okay? And they're constantly mapping all the locations. There it is on the top there. And you can put in your coordinates. You can look at your town. You can watch the rollout in those areas. And this is an interesting one because it doesn't identify every tower or every power pole that's having things put on it. What it's doing is giving you an overview of all the nodes that are available. But if you were looking at that and looking for somewhere to move to, if you thought, oh, I want to get somewhere that is a little bit quieter, you're getting stuck, aren't you? Right? Yeah, it really is crazy. And that difference between here and here, that's just a few years. What will it be next year? What will it be the year after? Here's a question for you, a bit of a trivia question, okay? Who was Australia's first case for compensation, workers' compensation, for electromagnetic radiation, and this specifically non-ionising radiation? Okay, it's not one you see on the, on the news. It's not one you see easily, but it's this gentleman here, right? That's Dr. MacDonald, who was actually the principal scientist for the CSIRO, okay? Now, that was February 2013. So he had a scientist who actually did have a predisposition to sensitivity, and he was hired knowing that they'd have to provide him with staff who would type up for him and things of this nature. So he didn't have to sit in front of a computer, because it wasn't just about mobile phones and radiation. He was actually sensitive to virtually every form of electric field. What comes out of the walls, what comes from lighting, what comes from all sorts of low-level energy devices which were still affecting him. But he was hired because of his qualifications, experience and ability. When you read the documents from the CSIRO regarding the case, they still identify him as a leading and productive scientist, but he could not work in what for them was a normal environment. Now that was 2013, March 2013. Within 2 years, this statement was put out by Lloyd's Underwriters of London. They underwrite by vicariously virtually everything on earth when it comes to insurance. They either own the companies that do or they do it themselves directly. So within 2 years of what became the first case in Australia, and I'm certain there were cases going on elsewhere in Europe, that statement was produced by the biggest insurance company on earth. And that statement is saying they will not insure anybody in their standard insurances for non-ionised radiation. And they gave us an example. Your mobile phone, right? And that was in their sights, wasn't it? Because at that time they could see the industrial rollout. They already knew the intention of industry. They know, and their researchers are looking at shares and development and all these different companies, so they know exactly where it's going. So the first thing they did is took their liability out of it. Because they know, don't they? They know what the problems are. And this is one of the reasons I came out of the healthcare industry to come back into engineering, because my business partner was on the telephone for about 3 hours a day speaking to patients. She died of a brain tumour. Okay, so that hit me, and I knew that even as healthcare practitioners, we were in a situation we didn't quite understand, and I had a leading edge advantage because I was working for the British military and multiple other roles in engineering where I understood this type of thing. So I took myself out of that industry to now support those people, the practitioners and the doctors that we were working with before, and the general public. So now we go and we work with homes of people who are sensitive and those who want to make a change. Because I actually am recognizing that most people start not sensitive, and we, on a toxic level, build up this problem. And bit by bit, we get to the point that we are toxic, and then we suddenly find we're struggling with everything. We go to shopping centres, you go into shops, you go into cinemas, you go into hotels, and suddenly you start feeling things. In your head, you get headaches, you can't sleep. It's a constant thing that's occurring for people. You don't have to be super sensitive to get to that state. Most people are starting to notice it in some manner in their lives. So the insurance companies, they knew it. So now in every one of your phones, if you go onto the legal page, so you go to the general, then you go to, I forget what it is, notes or manufacturer, and then it goes to legal page, and within there it says RF exposure, and it actually tell you, don't put your phone next to your head. Now the ergonomics of it are you pick it up and put it next to your head. Every movie, every sort of thing you see on TV, you see people pick the phone up and put it on their head. And yet the manufacturers are saying, do not do that. In fact, they're actually saying, even in their testing, that no, not a good idea. Now, you still get people ask this question, is it really affecting me? Well, there's a bio-initiative, which is a group of scientists. It's actually 1,470 pages, 79 pages, so almost 1,500 pages of work. 29 authors across 10 countries. There's 21 PhDs, 10 MDs on it. The amount of research in it is very significant, and it was done away from government departments and things of this nature. It was done independently, and this is a very good starting point if you want to start understanding from a medical point of view what types of problems are occurring that don't get, shall we say, resolved when you look at standards. And there are international standards, and we have governing bodies here, or should I say people who are supposed to be looking after our safety, who really possibly have missed it. Now, this is a summary of the latest update to the bio-initiative. So this is the updates from 2019. And if you took one thing away from this slide, the ones that say E, it means it has an effect on the body. The ones that say NE, it's no effect on the body. Now, if you looked at that, the ones in red are the ones that are having an effect. And you don't want effects. You don't want things influencing your body. Because if we went back to what Dr. Bourke said back in 85, he absolutely showed that our body is an electrical being, and we rely on it for repair, for detoxification, for function, for getting our hormones correct, for fertility, our mental state. They all interact with an electrical field, and if we bombard it from many different angles, we get these types of changes. Should I say, we get influences to the body, and they're recognized within these studies. And all of them are available within that document. Now, I know it's 1,500 pages, but it's a PDF. You can download it, and anything you're interested in, just use the search and have a look. I encourage you. This is a visual version of the same page. So all the red ones are the ones that are having effect. The blue ones are the ones that at that point they weren't able to identify a change. And the values are very low, as in what they were seeing. It took very little energy to make significant measurable changes to function of the body. Now, as a result of the bio-initiative, the panel decided to offer to each legislation what they recommended as a starting point for safety. They said, look, this is a precautionary limit, and they gave us values of 0.1 microwatts per centimetre squared, which is about 0.6 of a volt. So those of you that have EMF meters at home, they're types of values you can look at. That wasn't taken up anywhere, as far as I'm aware. None of the companies that try and provide safety decided to take the preliminary, or should I say precautionary process. So they stuck with the international standards, which were very inadequate in comparison to what the studies say. Have a look at this. This is a chart called the colour chart. And the colour chart's really useful because it's only 11 pages long, but it covers 130 studies. And they took colours. So if it was to do with the heart, they made it pink. If it was cancer, it was that sort of grey colour. A couple of different colours of like fertility and reproduction, they made it yellow. So you can look at the chart and you go, okay, I'm interested in, let's say you want more children, you're going to have a look at fertility. And you flick through, it's only 11 pages, you go, okay, there's one there that's yellow, let me have a look. That one there. So chronic exposure to mobile phones, reducing sperm count, 0.00034 of a microwatt per centimetre squared. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's about 7 decimal places. So we're talking about more than 10,000 times more energy in this room right now. Right now. So in the study, they said from that type of value, they were seeing changes in fertility. So we've just set up an environment where we can ruin fertility, and we're just in a hotel. And we've known that since 2006. If you're looking for information, because lots of people get challenged by their neighbours, their friends, and say, oh, you know, or their boss, where they say, no, I don't want that router sitting between my legs while I'm on the laptop. You know? And the boss will go, no, no, that's where it goes. And people feel helpless. They've got nothing to throw back at them. But these are 4 different locations, and to be honest, there's probably another dozen at least that have huge catalogues of research that's available to look at. So they're easy to locate. Studies are free to look at online. I mean, this one has got over 28,000 studies. Very useful if you're going to observe and look at health and safety in your environment. This is Dr. Klinghardt. Probably most of you might have come across him. He's quite a good public speaker. He does lots of information regarding autism and EMF and the environments that people live and particularly sleep in. Now, he's got to the point where he's made a statement saying that it's become very black and white for him. His clients either pay attention to EMF and they make changes and they get well as a result of that, or they don't make those changes, they don't pay attention to what's happening, and they carry on getting sick. And that's a pretty dire situation for a doctor when you actually think you probably know what's causing the problem for a lot of people and exasperating and adding to what they're already suffering with, and they're not making their lives easier by finding spaces to rest and recover. If you don't have that safe place to rest and recover, your bedroom, so to speak, then you will just continue to become toxic. And that's one of the things we do in consults. We really target to make sure that that one space, if you've only got one space, make that space that quiet, safe space with no EMF, no electric fields, no magnetic fields, no geopathic stress. And that sounds like a bit of a long list, but actually if you can do that, then you can detoxify and you can survive in the environment that's going to be getting worse outside these doors. These are just a couple off that list. Remembering at the moment we're several decimal places to the left, if you might look at that, okay? These things are occurring all the time. Every single day people are going into hospitals trying to work out what's wrong with them, and they're living in environments that are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times more energized with electromagnetic patterns. And as you can see, most of these have been around a very long time. Like DNA, the effects on genes and DNA, they've known even at that very, very low level at the top there, since, what, 1997? That's like 22 years ago. And yet, nothing's being done because the interests and those that are rolling out these technologies are interested in the industrial side of it. And they're not worried about your DNA at the moment. Fatigue, depression, sleeping disorders, that covers probably, a huge proportion of society. And the values required in the studies to induce those types of conditions are extremely low, aren't they? This is a little test we did on a mobile phone. And to be honest, the values weren't particularly high. I didn't drive the phone to what's considered maximum. I wasn't sending data as in video or anything of that nature. It was simply dialing the message bank. Okay, so it's just an audio call. And yet the values were about 11.8 microwatts per centimetre squared. Now that's only about 26% of the international standard that's applied here to the general public. Now that's at the head, and when I say the head, I mean at the head. If I pick the phone up and put it next to my head, that was the value dialing through to listen to the message bank. And it's only 26% of the public value. But in a moment, we'll have a look at how that compares with some of those other studies. With the phone a metre away, 100 centimetres, so just a bit more than hand's distance, the value drops to this, 0.007. Now that's a big improvement, isn't it, for us? Right? It's getting somewhere close to which might be, well, I don't want to say better, but it's not as bad, is it? So by putting your phone just 1 metre away on your desk, instead of having it right there so you can keep checking the screen, just put it on the other end of the desk, and now you've reduced that threat significantly, particularly if you've got it on all day. Now this is a tragic situation. We see this everywhere, don't we? This is the youth of today. Those phones are basically blocking their conversation, aren't they? We'd hope as adults that they'd learn to talk to each other. But this is destroying the social skills of our children. Absolutely destroying them. Now, the International Institute of Engineers, or Electrical Engineers, did that test that you see in front of you in 1996 on mobile phones. 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds and adults. It speaks for itself, doesn't it? It just leaves you speechless. You look at it and you go, well, if we knew that when we put a phone next to a head, we wouldn't do that. And that's why the insurance companies took non-ionizing radiation off the insurance globally, because they know this is there and they don't want anything to do with it. They know the claims are going to go through the roof despite the safety standards that have been put in place, which we've just realized are completely inadequate. Now, how big is the problem? Well, we've got 5G at the moment. People are frightened about it, and to be honest, they should be. It's rolling out without proper testing. But I've likened it to another onion in the soup, because 4G, 3G, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Internet of Things, they've all been there rolling around, and we've been swimming around in that soup for the last, 15 years. It's got worse and worse and worse and worse. But it's hundreds of millions of times more than we were ever expected to live in. Our biology didn't normally live in that state 1,000 years ago, and we're exactly the same as we were 1,000 years ago. We weren't designed to live in that state. But we've got not just the mobile phone situation, we've got the magnetic fields, the electric fields, the overhead power lines, underground cables. All of these things are radiating electrical fields, magnetic fields that are all influencing us in a very similar way to the mobile phones. Now the mobile phone, you can go, okay, I'm not going to put this next to my head. I know why I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to put it over here. In the legal side of your phone, it actually suggests, right, that you use accessories such as headphones to keep the phone away from your head. It's in the legal area. They're actually telling you, do that. Don't put it next to your head. They're keen for you not to take out a suit on them. But these types of energy are rolling out all the time. For a long time, people were concerned about the airport scanners, but we've just been bullied into it. You know, you want to get on the plane, you've got to walk through. Is that going to be the same with our mobile network, where it doesn't matter what the results are for testing in health, they're just going to railroad us and say you've got to do this? Electric cars, radars of every type, they want to weave all these elements together so that everything's controlled, radiating, and able to monitor everything you do. So that's why the density of EMF is increasing and increasing. Microwave ovens. I'm sure nobody here actually puts food in a microwave oven, do you? No. I could do a whole lecture on that, and I'm not going to do it. It's crazy insanity. If you ever want to test out a microwave oven, right, if you're still doing food in a microwave oven, you don't have to put your hand up, right? But just get some seeds. Get some seedlings of any type you want. Get 3 lots. Put them on a windowsill. Separate them just a little bit so you remember which is which. Take a pint of water, microwave it so it's nice and hot like you would for a cup of coffee, and then let it cool down. And then get some tap water and put that in another jug, and get some rainwater and put that in another jug. And then put the jugs next to your seedlings, and then just drip feed them with the water over the next week or so. All right? And the results are always the same. You know what Roundup is? Right? That's the one, it'll look like Roundup on the one that's microwave. Right? And yet, you're drinking water that you put in there, you're putting food in there, it always ends up looking like you've put Roundup on it. Do the test yourself. All of the manufacturers of the devices that are in this, shall we say, soup of EMF, they're all working on what's known as the intended standards, but they're not using cautionary principles at all. We need cautionary principles. That means that they won't use values beyond where they know it's safe. Now the industry at the moment's gone completely the other way. They're saying you need to prove categorically that this is dangerous, otherwise we're just going to keep going ahead. That's like driving a car flat out saying I'm not going to stop until I crash. Isn't it? Now they're taking products like this, they're trying to throw as many EMF-based, microwave-based devices into our world. And these are, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make things convenient, they're trying to say they're sexy or they're fun, or they're trying to get kids involved, they're trying to push these unnecessary microwave transmitters onto people. Now I can see that some of them could be quite useful if you wanted to monitor something, but you don't need to monitor and transmit to your phone simultaneously, do you? Why not monitor, and then when you take it off, then download? So types of usage, ways of using these things, has a big influence on your exposure rate. Now have you seen, anybody aware of this? There are tens of thousands of cases of people getting burns and irritations and lymphatic damage from exactly, okay? So if you're thinking about buying a kid something for Christmas, don't go for the thing that looks like a sweet wrapper, all fun and games. Get them outside. Get them doing something in the sunlight, in the real world, not this digital world of radiated microwaves. That's a problem, and it's being ignored. This is a common home. Everybody's living in houses which now they've got more and more digital items, more and more devices that are literally working their way into everything. And most of them aren't needed. Most of them don't need to be wired up and going backwards and forwards to everything else. Ethernet cables are extremely useful. They're the ones you just plug in, and then you can turn your router, the transmission off your router, so that the Wi-Fi goes off. That is probably one of the simplest things for most people to do. The number one thing is don't put your phone next to your bed to charge, right? Radiating away all night. Just move it into another room or turn it off and just have the alarm running. It'll still wake you up in the morning, but you don't need to have it transmitting backwards and forwards all night, silently messing with the way your brain works. Did you realise this? They're building clothes with Bluetooth in. It's true. They're actually monitoring the usage of clothes, right? So that if you've got a pair of pants that from the same company, they can see how you're mixing and matching it. They can potentially work out with this what you're wearing to work, what you're wearing to the nightclubs, what your social clothes are. They basically want to know everything about you so they can market to you. So they've got what are localized transmitters in the clothes. That's insanity, isn't it? Yes. Now, 20 years ago, you would have said, "Oh no, don't play under there," right? And now that's been overshadowed by, don't play under that telephone tower and don't play under, next to that transformer. And everywhere we look, there appears to be more and more sources of problems. But this was obvious, you could see it, great big monsters of power. We think we know what towers look like as well, don't we? So we can take a precautionary process ourselves and go, okay, well, I'm going to try not to live next to one of these. But the number of places I've been to where people say, oh, there was a beautiful house, and then they built this. One house I was in recently, they're only 60 metres from the base of the tower. 60 metres, and that's lawful according to the local council. Crazy transmitters. So you think you know what a tower looks like? Yeah? These are actually pretty obvious, right? But I've been to churches recently where they have towers and they've literally put in telecom towers inside the church tower. So churches are literally cashing in and then radiating not only the audience, but they're radiating their local communities. And they're cashing in because they've created tall buildings. Here's an interesting one. This is at Hervey Bay. And that tower is approximately 2.5 metres from the fence of the school. It's literally, you feel like you can touch it, you're leaning over the fence. And the fence to the left is a cricket pitch. Okay, so the kids will spend hours at a time every week playing cricket just here. And that value there on the screen is 17,550,000 times more energy than has been proven in studies to damage DNA and gene expression. Right? 17,550,000 times more. Where's our safety parameter? Where's our support from our APANZA and other groups who are supposed to be looking after us? Sadly, they're not actually looking after health. They pay lip service to it, and they are in the pockets of industry. I think that's pretty clear, isn't it? This is the same school, walked a few hundred metres away to the play area, which is right outside the classrooms. The classrooms are right there. This is the play area. It's a couple of hundred metres from the tower. It's 56 times more energy than was found in studies in 1997 to provide irreversible infertility after 5 generations of mice in a gold standard study. Right? So it's 56 times more than the energy required to create infertility. And this is at a school here in Queensland. This is at a shopping centre, right, here in Queensland. If you walk around, you'll see on some of them these transmitters on the ceiling. The reading is the same as the phone on my head. So when I put the phone to my head, I get the same value as if I'm about 3 metres from a transmitter in the ceiling of a shopping centre. Now, if you go to that shopping centre for, let's say, 20 minutes, half an hour, and let's say we average this sort of value, that would be equivalent of having let's say, a 20 to 30 minute phone call with the phone next to your head, which even the manufacturers of the phones saying, don't do that, we're not going to insure you. Right? Now, how many times a week do you go to the shops? Once? Or do you go twice? Or do you go 4 times? What's an average? Twice a week? Twice a week. Okay, that's right. So when they did the testing for the telephones and they came up with their safety standards, they called heavy usage 30 minutes a week on a phone. 30 minutes was heavy usage of a mobile phone when they designed the standards, because they expected everybody to still have cable phones, and it was only very rare rich people maybe who would have those mobile phones and be on them for long periods of time. Well, long is half an hour once a week. Not walking to the shops and coming away again. You didn't realise you'd just blown out your levels of EMF that would have typically been allocated to phone usage. Now, in 1972, they released a big document, in fact a whole series of documents regarding to EMF, and it was done by the US Navy research institutes. And the scandal is that all the details and all the information had been locked away for 50 years because they knew there were industrial issues. They wanted industry to get a handle on it, the military to get a handle on it, and then the public finally found out about it after 50 years of secrecy. By then, industry and the military have done all the things they wanted to do with it, and then they're exposing us to it all the way. So the knowledge that there was radio sickness as a result of testing, they kept that secret for 50 years. Now, with that information, they've just rolled out everything they want virtually without even looking at the health implications that we saw in the Bio Initiative. Now, that's only one area, the radio area. How many of you got solar panels? And you were sold it because it's sold as a green energy, right? Or green's a colour, right? What's that? It's a way of generating energy. Now, dirty electricity is generated by these through inverters. It's an engineering problem, okay? There are ways of, resolving it, and it just means to build better inverters. But the manufacturers, well, there's no incentive to put those extra components in because you, the public, don't know about it. So they're going to keep quiet. Because in the future, maybe you'll go, oh, I've got a dirty one, I want a clean one. So you could buy an upgrade, right? That's the type of industries we're talking about who produce these things, right? So they've produced rubbish inverters that they claimed as a sinusoidal waveform and clean all this, clean all that. But when you put an oscilloscope on it, it looks like this, all right? And they hate me for it, right? But when you measure it, that's what it looks like. It's roaring away. And it's been recognised globally. It's a topic globally for engineers and healthcare alike. There's plenty of studies. There's like 84 studies on Stetzer Electric alone. Some of them are case studies. Some of them are full medical studies. There's all sorts of stuff. It's one of those things that cat's out of the bag, so to speak. Dirty electricity is harmful to the body. It puts a very aggressive signal upon the electrical fields that radiate from the wall. So one minute we're talking about a mobile phone producing EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, and now you realise that the cabling in the walls is producing a form of EMF that's got information upon it. This violent green is actually an aggressive signal that messes with the way your hormones function, your nervous system. The number of patients we visited who have horrendous values of this, and they're suffering MS and a whole series of significant chronic diseases. And when we filter this off the walls and we actually clean it out, they just go, I can't believe how I feel. They suddenly have this miraculous change in their mindset and their bodies because they're electric beings. They're responding to the electrical fields, just like Obeka pointed out in 1985. But it's not just solar panels, because you might not have solar panels. sorry, there's bad news. If you buy electricity, they're feeding that dirty electricity into the grid and then you buy it, right? So whether you've got the solar panel or your neighbour or your neighbour's neighbour, you're still buying it, sadly. If you've got an air conditioner when you run it up, there's a whole range of that, and there are some manufacturers that have actually done proper inverters that are clean, but until you test it you don't know. But the smart meters, the way they communicate through your house, they fire information patterns up the cables. You've read about the smart meters interrogating your home, okay, to see your usage of equipment. They basically know how often your fridge turns on, what you're doing with your TV or your computers. They're interrogating the activities in your home. Well, this same type of information that the smart meter's putting out, it appears in the same manner. It looks like that on an oscilloscope. It's a mess. It can be dealt with filters, okay? Simple stuff, and that's the type of thing we talk to people about. There are other things. If you're building a home, you could build a home without EMF protection, or you could build it with EMF protection. And we work with builders and retrofit items to homes if people are renovating. If you've realised they've put a tower next to your house, or you're getting bombarded by your neighbour's Wi-Fi, there are ways of mitigating it. There are graphite paints, and there are other things that you can create a Faraday cage. You literally paint it out, and then you stop the EMFs and electric fields getting into your home, so when you sleep you detoxify, so you're capable of functioning in the world that's outside those doors. There's some interesting tests. This is the references to the test, but most people don't understand decibels. They're an engineering thing, they're a nuisance, okay? They're different ways of valuing things. But what these values mean is at different frequencies, paint can absorb different things. Down here, for example, we can go from about 1% to about 10,000% of the amount of energy that's outside. So you really can shut down stuff that's coming in. So when people try and buy houses or rent or move, instead of just looking for white ants and the structure, in the future people are looking at how much pollution there is, how much EMF there is, what's on that home or house. Now there's a statement that I've put here. We the people require transparency in environmental and health policies, not a dictatorship ruled by banks and industry. Because I think you'll probably recognise the numbers of documents we've got there. We shouldn't be having to second guess healthcare because the agencies aren't able to help us properly, and that's a tragedy. As a result, I've set up a company which working together with Wave Control, which is a European manufacturer of specialty equipment, and we literally do testing for industry and homes and councils, and we actually help them understand the problems that are occurring because they're too far behind the game. They hand out mobile phones and they don't realise the responsibilities they have. You wouldn't give anybody a chainsaw without giving them instructions, but every business is handing out mobile phones and letting them put them to their heads. This is a little car. It's a bit like the Google car, except we can map from buildings, from the car, and we can map EMF everywhere and produce maps of this nature where you know every street, every town, every area, every park, every restaurant, every beach, so you can choose the level of exposure you want to have. And this is the type of thing I propose to councils, etc. I've got a meeting with the Noosa Shire Council on Monday morning. They've asked me to go in and talk to them about this. We didn't ring them up and say, oh, we've got an idea. They rang us and said, we need help. Right? So this is really good news. Some of the shires are willing to talk about it. And we're able to provide mapping systems where the public have access, they see it, there's transparency, and the councils and businesses find out what's really happening, totally separate to the telcos who are rolling the material out. We've done this in over 60 countries. This is a device I'm a bit fond of. This is what's known as a WaveMon. It's a nice simple device which is supposed to measure EMF and electric fields and protect workers. It straps to the arm, goes on the chest. Sorry. You can put it on your overalls or put it on a stick and put it at the top of a pole. I've reprogrammed it so it does 0.5%, 1%, 2.5%, 5%, 10% and 20%. So it's not looking at the whole scale, it's looking right at the very bottom, because actually that's where our concerns are. And I hope, my dream is to make this available to the public so that across the planet they can monitor their own environment, and everywhere they go, it has a GPS in it which is mapped to the data, and then they can upload the data, and then everybody sees where they want to go on holiday, where they want to go shopping, what cinemas they want to go to, based on the levels of EMF that they're being exposed to. Totally separate system to the government and the telcos. Real time, created by the people, for the people. And we have these devices ready, and they're being produced already. So now we need to develop the website and then make it available to the public. I hope that's been of interest to you. As you can see, I've got quite a different slant on what the 5G is. It's a good thing because it's suddenly made us aware of what's going on, because up until that point we're all in the soup and we didn't even know it was there. Now we can go, there seems to be a problem and we need to look at it. Thank you very much.